All right, guys, welcome back. I'm Caitlin, and I am really excited about today's video. Today we're talking about classical conversations, all about it. What is it? Why did we pick it? How does it work? What did I think? What does it look like at home? What does it look like on your community day? So that's what you're in for today's video. So last year, the 2019-2020 school year was our first year with classical conversations. And as you know, the whole world shut down at the end of that year. So we did not get to finish out the school year in the traditional manner. And what that meant was our campus, our community did not get to have any open houses. Everything shut down before we had any open houses. So I had several friends locally who had been interested in classical conversations, and they did not get to come and kind of experience a community day. And so I was trying to figure out what's the best way that I can kind of explain to them what CC is and what it looks like when they're not actually able to see it in person. So what I ended up doing is I wrote this really long, thorough blog post about it, and I will link that below. But I wrote the blog post, and that way I could send it to people who were asking, how does it work? What does it look like? What did you think? And I meant to do a video, but never really got around to it. And so now that we have finished up our second full year of CC, I thought this is a good time. I'm doing all my curriculum reviews that I do at the end of the year. It's a good time to talk about CC and make this into video form so that people who prefer video can watch it. So let's get started. Okay, first let's start with, why did our family choose classical conversations? So I knew after I had kids that I wanted to homeschool at some point. And I also knew that I wanted to be part of some sort of co-op homeschool group so that I wasn't just going at it alone. And I had a neighbor who was also planning to homeschool her children, and they're a little bit older than mine. So one day she texted me and was like, hey, this local homeschool group is having an open house. We're going, would you guys like to come too? And I was like, sure. Now at that time, my oldest was still 2 years away from kindergarten age. And so I just wanted to go kind of see. So I went into it having no idea what classical conversations was. I mean, none. And so I just went, I was like, this will be fun. We'll check it out. And it was fun. It was cool. And it was also like, what is going on exactly? It was a little confusing. So I have an education background. I was a high school teacher, and then I was also an elementary librarian. And so I've been in a school setting, and what I was picturing in my head of what a CC day for a kindergartner would look like was not what it actually looked like. Because here are these kids who were reciting math equations that I taught my high schoolers, and they were reciting Latin, and they were singing like this really long timeline song. And I was like, well, that's not what I would picture a kindergarten classroom looking like. But I was very intrigued. I loved that there was a lot of song involved. Our family, we love to sing. My kids pick up songs very quickly. And so that seemed really cool. It was a great group of people. The community was very welcoming. And so even though I didn't quite understand the concept behind it, I still thought it was neat. And so we then attended the open house the following year to just make sure that this was the direction we wanted to go. And I did more research through the next 2 years. And so then when my son was finally old enough for kindergarten, we made the decision to join our local CC group. So what is Classical Conversations? Classical Conversations is a Christian-based classical education program. And honestly, even though I was an educator myself, I did not know what a classical education was. I'd not heard that term before. It didn't mean anything to me. So I did some reading and some research, and here's kind of a summary of a quote by someone who wrote a book about classical education, which again, all this is linked in my blog post. But she says, the early years of school are spent absorbing facts and laying the foundation. The middle grades, students learn to think through arguments, and in high school, they learn to express themselves. So when I saw those kids learning the math facts and the Latin and the history and all these seemingly obscure random facts, what that was actually doing was having them memorize things that, no, they don't understand them right now, but as they get older, they will build on that. And the best analogy I can come up with for that is if you were raised in the church, if you grew up going to Sunday school, or you currently are taking your kids to Sunday school, your kids or yourself are probably getting a classical education. It's just not called that. I don't know about you, but for me, growing up, we learned like the names of the judges and the names of the apostles and the books of the Bible. We memorized a lot of random Bible facts that didn't mean much to us when we were 3, 4, 5 years old. But as we got older, we expanded on that. We learned the stories. And then as we got even older, we dove into what the stories meant and how that applied to our life. That's a classical education, and that is how CC works. So once I sort of wrapped my head around that, it made a lot more sense to me. So instead of learning Bible, although there is Bible involved, it's the same principle, but with Latin and with math and with science and with history and with geography. Okay, so that's kind of like the foundation behind it. And again, there's books, there's articles, all that stuff is linked if you want to dive into it further. Now let's talk about how does classical conversations itself actually work. Now that you understand the classical model, how does CC work? So CC is broken up into 3 different levels. There's foundations, which is the youngest group, essentials, which is your middle group, and then challenge, which is your oldest group. In foundations, that is called the grammar stage, which when I first started hearing people throw that around, I was confused because to me, grammar was what we learned in school that was like English grammar, right? Nouns and pronouns and all that kind of stuff. For classical education, for classical conversations, grammar means learning a bunch of facts from a bunch of different subjects. So they learn facts from math, science, Latin, English, history, geography. I think that's everything. I hope I got that all. And this is for students that are 4 years old to 12. So basically from the time they're in kindergarten or even pre-K if you decide to start your child that early, up to what we would consider middle school. Students up to age 8 do only foundations. So that's the only part. Once they get past 8, we're gonna add on essentials and I'll talk about that in a second. But up to age 8 is just foundations. So CC foundations plus a language arts program of your choice, you can pick whatever, plus a math program of your choice, that is a full homeschool curriculum for that age. So if you're part of classical conversations, then you will do that. That covers all of your subjects, except you'll need a supplemental math and language arts program. And I can link to all that and what we use, but everyone chooses something different for their family. Foundations meets for 24 weeks of the school year, 12 in the fall and then 12 in the spring. And there is a whole book written by the founder of CC that explains, kind of foundations and how it works and why, the logic behind it. Again, that's linked below. All right. Once they reach age 9, which we would probably, if you are from the school system or your kids have been in the school system, would consider about 4th grade, you continue to do foundations, but you also join in essentials. That's kind of like their version of early middle school. And if you're in a community, which means you meet once a week with local people in your community, your kids will probably do foundations in the morning, break for lunch, essentials in the afternoon. So like for my family, we just go in the morning and then at lunchtime we are done because my kids are only in foundations. The people who have kids who are older, who are in essentials, they stay in the afternoon and continue their school day, okay? And I just want to say, I'm going to share like the basics behind essentials and challenge, but I don't have any personal experience with it yet since my oldest is only 7. We've just done 2 years of foundations. So this is not like a comprehensive look at essentials or challenge. This is mostly a look at foundations. I'm just kind of giving you like the bare bones so you can see the full picture. So in essentials, when they add that on in around 4th grade, 9 years old, that afternoon program, they will then dive really deeply into English language, diagramming sentences. They do a ton of writing, and it's a very full language arts program. So once your child is in essentials, they do foundations, they have essentials, and then the only thing you need to add on is a math program of your choice. So CC covers everything else. I mean, you can always supplement, of course, but as far as making sure you've crossed, covered all your bases, checked all the boxes, you would just need to add on a math program. And just like foundations, essentials meets for 24 weeks of the year, 12 in the fall, 12 in the spring. And then the final stage is challenge, and that is what we would think of as like 7th through 12th grade. There's 6 levels of challenge. Challenge A, which is our version of 7th grade. Challenge B, which is 8th grade, and the challenges 1, 2, 3, and 4, which would be 9th through 12th grade. And this, again, I don't know tons about it because I don't have a child in challenge, but this is where all that work that was done in Foundations and Essentials comes into play, and that laid the foundation, the framework for what they're going to be working on in challenge. And this is where they learn to research, they learn to debate, they learn to apply logic, they express themselves. In Foundations, the kids identify lots of places on a map. In challenge, the kids draw the map from memory. In Foundations, the kids learn major parts of the digestive system, just reciting the names. In challenge, they learn where that's located and draw the digestive system themselves. So the stuff they learned in Foundations comes to play throughout their whole entire CC career, and they continue to build on it. Challenge is a full day, and it meets for 30 weeks a year. So it's a little bit longer than Foundations and Essentials. So 15 in the fall, 15 in the spring. Okay, so what are your kids actually going to learn in Foundations? So Foundations runs on a 3-year cycle. So we have cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3, and then it repeats. So your child will actually go through each cycle. If they start Foundations from a really young age, they'll go through each cycle multiple times. And so they will build on what they've learned 3 years prior. And you jump in at any cycle. The whole entire country, world, I don't really know if CC is worldwide, but the whole country, all of the CC campuses across the country are doing the same cycle at the same time. So if you join a CC campus in one state, they're going to be learning the exact same thing as a CC campus at another state. It's whatever cycle the whole CC program is on. So like when we started last year, we started on cycle 2, and then we did cycle 3 this year, and then next year we'll do cycle 1. So you don't have to start at cycle 1. It's not like a linear thing, and it's fine to just jump in wherever your child is when they start kindergarten or whenever you decide to start CC. So it gets people confused when they're called cycles 1, 2, and 3, and they think, oh, we have to start in cycle 1 because it's our first year. You just jump in wherever, and then you loop around every 3 years. All right, so a couple of things that each cycle covers. Cycle 1 is ancient history, classification of living things, plants and flowers, rocks and mountains, Latin noun endings, English prepositions and verbs. Cycle 2 is medieval history up through modern history. It's food chains, biomes, space, English pronouns, other parts of speech. Cycle 3 that we just finished, that's U.S. history, U.S. geography, the periodic table, anatomy, Latin parts of speech, English verbs and clauses. Math stays the same through all the cycles. So you do the same 24 math sentences every single year. That does not change. You also learn a timeline. You can see that up here. You learn a timeline that stretches through the whole entire year, and you repeat that timeline every single year. That does not change either. You have a Foundations guide, which I'll talk more about this in a second, but that shows you everything that you're going to be doing in each cycle and everything you're going to be doing in each week. So everyone who is doing CC for that school year learns the same information on week 1, and then everybody learns the same week 2 information, and so on. So each week, what the curriculum covers is new grammar, which is how they refer to the new sentences or phrases of memory work that you learn for history, geography, science, English, Latin, and math. There are 7 timeline events that you'll memorize. Fine arts, that changes every 6 weeks. So the first 6 weeks, they learn drawing. Then the next 6 weeks, they learn the tin whistle. The next 6 weeks, they learn about artists. And then the next 6 weeks, they learn about composers. And that, like, the 4 sections of fine arts does not change each year, but what they learn within those does change. So they learn different artists every year of the cycle and different composers and that kind of stuff. Science experiment, there is at least one science experiment every week as well. And a presentation. Every week, the students do a presentation for their class. So kind of think about show and tell type, especially for those earlier years. it's kind of show and tell. As they get older, it's a more formal presentation where they do more research ahead of time, that kind of thing, which is very cool. That was one of the things I loved about CC when I was coming to the open houses, was that the kids were getting up in front of their peers, even at a very young age, and speaking to them and working on that public speaking skill that a lot of kids don't have. So I thought that was awesome. Now, what should you expect on Community Day? Well, again, if you can go experience this in person, that is amazing, and I highly recommend it. However, if you weren't able to because of coronavirus last year, or, the year is already over and you're considering it for next year, maybe I can at least give you an idea of what happens. Now, this is just what our community does. I can't say that this is how it looks across the country, but this will at least give you like kind of an idea. Yours may look different. So for us, we have a campus, which is a local church building. And in the morning, all of the foundations and essential students and their parent who's with them, we meet together in a large group that we call morning meeting. And by the way, Classical Conversations is not a drop-off co-op. The parents stay and help in the classrooms or teach the classes and stay with their child and learn the memory work along with them. Just making sure that's out there, because I know some co-ops are kind of drop off. So anyway, Challenge has like their own separate classes in a separate part of the building. They start before us, like they start the day before we do. So we don't really see them a lot, but for the Foundations and Essentials kids, we meet in our morning meeting. And during that time, we go over the timeline and we learn the hand motions that go along with the timeline for the week. We do a devotional and we do, the pledge, we have announcements, and then one family will get up and do a family presentation. So like I shared a minute ago about how every student does a presentation each week, every family does a presentation once per year. After our morning meeting, then the students break off and go into their classes, and these are divided just by age. So there are classes of about six to 9 students, and like the youngest group goes one, and then the next little group of kids. And then there's one parent called the tutor who leads that class. Classical Conversations does not call them the teacher, although it's kind of the teacher role. They're supposed to be just demonstrating to the students and their parents how to do the memory work. But it's kind of semantics. Basically, they're the teacher for the day, but we call them tutors. So the class structure, again, it's going to change for your campus, but it looks something like this. For 30-ish minutes, they learn the new grammar, which, like I said earlier, that's the new memory work for the week. So Latin, English, science, history, math, and geography. They're going to learn a sentence or a list, or they're going to learn like 5 or so locations on the map, but they're going to be introduced to that week's memory work. And a lot of times that is introduced by song. Not always, but they often learn songs and hand motions that go along with it. At some point in the class, they will do presentations. So each child will get up and they'll do their little presentation. For the little bitty ones, it's very casual. Like I said, it's kind of show and tell, like, they show you their stuffed animal, but it just gets them used to speaking. And then the other students in class ask questions. And so it gets them used to asking good questions. And then the response back and forth. As they get older, it gets more structured, and they might use notes and they do more research and that kind of stuff. There will be a time for fine arts, and depending on which 6 weeks we're in, they may be practicing their tin whistle, they may be drawing, they may be learning about an artist and then kind of making their own art with a similar method. They might be listening to a piece of music and learning about the composer, learning parts of the orchestra, that sort of thing. There will be a portion of time for science, and they'll do some sort of science experiment. We have built towers. We have mapped out a scale model of the solar system. We have, looked at certain things that float and things that don't. And we did like a probability unit within our science stuff. So there will be some sort of science experiment time. And then usually at the end of class, there is a time for review. And so they review past week's memory work and go over that. That's a full morning. That lasts until lunchtime. And at that point, everybody breaks for lunch. Like we were, Foundations, we were done after lunch. The Essentials kids, they come back and do more of their afternoon essentials classes after lunch. Now, how do you get started? Okay, you can absolutely do classical conversations on your own at home. There are lots of people who do. They don't join a community for whatever reason. They don't want to spend the money, or they don't have one near them, or this year, people weren't wanting to meet in person, so they're probably more doing it at home this year. You can. However, most people want to be part of an actual community. So I'm going to assume that that is kind of where you're going, and those are the directions I'm going to give. So first, find a community near you. So if you don't already know of one, there is a link on their website, which again, linked in my blog post, where you can click and you can type in your zip code and it will pull up any and give you contact information for the director. So you can message them and find out when do they meet and do they have openings for next year and that kind of thing. And then there will be an application to fill out and tuition to pay. So yes, CC is a paid program, and that tuition goes to pay the director of your campus, your child's tutors, your director. Part of that will be like a supply fee that your director will use to buy the things for the science experiments and for the art classes and that kind of thing. And then you'll need to get your curriculum, and that is whether you're joining a campus or not, you will need the curriculum that goes along with classical conversations. So now let's talk about that. What supplies do you need? All right, so there's only two things that you absolutely have to have in order to do CC. One is this foundations guide, which this has all the curriculum for all 3 cycles. So once you buy this one time, you hang on to it and you use it every single year because it has everything for cycle 1, cycle 2, and cycle 3. You also need a tin whistle for the 6 weeks of tin whistle. You can get them straight from CC or Amazon. I just got ours from Amazon. That's all you have to have. Now there are some supplemental things that some people choose to add on, but that's not a must. And I have a separate video where I showed what all I got our first year, and I'll link that so you can see that. But some other things that we like. We like the timeline cards. Here's my box of timeline cards. You can also see them above me here on my wall. They are not a must-have, but they are nice. There's 4 sets, and you get all 4 sets of them, and that is the whole entire timeline. They're nice to have. I like to look at them, and there's information on the back, but they're not a must-have. You can do it without it. We really love, this is like my top recommendation outside of your 2 must-haves, and that is the maps. There's like, these are like placemat size, and then these are foldable ones. But my kids love tracing the maps. They really love that. And so we love having these at home so that they can use dry erase markers and trace the maps. And our campus does a map challenge where if you trace a certain amount of maps, you get a reward. So my kids have really enjoyed that, and they love the geography portion. There's also an app that some people choose to get, some people don't. There is memory work on the CDs. Again, some people choose to get it, some people do not. There's also a subscription to something called CC Connected, which is a subscription service Classical Conversation offers that has additional resources that other parents have created and uploaded, and that way you can print them off. I have a couple of videos from the last 2 years where I have shown all that stuff that I do to prep and organize. Like, these are the memory sentences from one of the weeks, and I'll show like where do I get that and how do I set that up and how do I organize my timeline cards and all that kind of stuff. And those are totally separate videos that I will link to if you're interested, but for this video I'm just kind of giving you an overview. But those are some of the things that we use and love for CC. There's other stuff on the website. There's flashcards, there's lots of other supplemental materials that you can do, so poke around and see. But for us, we just keep it pretty simple. The guide, the tin whistle, and we love our maps. Okay, so what about outside of Community Day? So the other 4 days of the week, what do we do? Well, we keep it very simple because my kids are young. They are going to see all these cycles again at least once, if not twice, during the Foundations and Essentials program before hitting challenge. So in my opinion, we do not need to do a ton of outside stuff. They're getting exposed to it, and that's plenty. and then we'll see it again in 3 years. We go over the memory work every day very quickly, and I have done a video showing like just a sample day in our homeschool life, so I'll link that so that you can check that out. But we go over the memory work just one time for each of the memory work sentences. We keep it very chill. Some of the things that my kids really liked, like history and geography, sometimes we'd go over that more than once just because they loved singing the song. For the most part, we just very quickly review each of the memory items one time. Like I mentioned, our community did that map challenge, and my kids really were like motivated by that and wanted to do that. So we do trace the maps usually every day because they're so excited. I just kind of take their lead and dive into the subjects that they are interested in and don't worry too much about the others. So my kids really love history the most, and also geography. And so we will talk about that more and watch videos about that and read more about that. But we don't do that for all of the subjects, just the ones that they're really interested in. You know, I don't push them to memorize everything because they're little and they're gonna see it again. And even with that, even with just going over each memory work one time a day, so 4 days outside of our community day plus our community day, my kids pick up so much. It is amazing how much they memorize, how much they remember from last year. Even my 2-year-old has a lot of it memorized. She can sing John 1 through 7 in English and in Latin because we've listened to the song so many times. She sings parts of the timeline song. She knows some of the history song. You know, like they pick it up even with a very small amount of extra work. And so I know that seeing it again in 3 years, they're just gonna learn it more fully, which is the point of the program. So there are a few other things we did. I did buy some Osborne books and some books from Amazon and thrift books that go along with the cycle because, you know, it's nice to sometimes, when we were talking about the periodic table or American history or medieval times, depending on the cycle we're in, you know, things that caught my kids' interest, it was nice to be able to pull something that was age appropriate for them and read a little bit more. So I did have some extra books. I also print off some worksheets from CC Connected, and I really just have those on hand for the kids to work on, you know, during our quiet time of the day or in the car. It's not something that's like a required thing for them to do. In fact, I just make them optional, you know, like here's some worksheets that go along this week. If you want to do them, great. If you don't want to, fine. That's all talked about in my organization video where I show like what I print off and where I store them, all that kind of stuff. But that's just, my kids love worksheets, which I know like some people are like super anti-worksheet, and I'm really not one to do a lot of worksheets, but it's because they enjoy them and they think they're fun to color and they're fun to work on. So I do print those off. Sometimes we'll do some related YouTube videos. There are some great CC parents who have compiled, you know, list of videos and activities for the week, and I have a bunch of those linked in my blog post. And so sometimes we'll do some extra stuff, and a lot of times we don't. Like we just keep it really, really simple. We review the memory work, we do the occasional YouTube video or worksheet. Mostly we just, you know, the first year my oldest was in kindergarten, then last year he was in first, and then I had my 4-year-old who did CC as well. No other curriculum, but you know, I want them to play. I just want them to play and to have that time to be little. There's tons of time for them to do schoolwork, and so we just do very little amount, and it's perfect. They learned so much. They got so interested in maps and geography and history, and you know, learned all sorts of random science stuff. I mean, like they learned a ton, even without me sitting and doing hours of work with them every single day. So it was, especially last year when I was so brand new, I couldn't even tell you like what we're gonna be learning the next week. I wasn't even looking ahead because I was just, you know, trying to manage everything of my first year. The second year, I got a little more organized, and I at least read through what was coming up, and I was like, oh, okay, here's the topics we're gonna learn. But you know, like we just took it week by week, and we would work on that week's memory work if we were interested in it. If not, we just didn't. So that's kind of what we do outside of CC. And that's it. I know that was a really long video, but hopefully that was useful if you are researching classical conversations. We loved it. We really did. I'm so impressed with how much my kids have picked up. We love our CC community. We love having that group of like-minded families to spend time with. so we're not just floating out here alone. My kids are excited about next year. It has been fantastic. I know it seems a little weird and obscure when you first get into it, but if you'll take some time to observe and, research a little bit, I think you'll find that it is a very cool, very fantastic program. And for my kids, it has just been amazing. They are really, really happy with it. And I'm excited for us to continue through, their elementary, middle, and high school years. So I hope that was helpful. I'm gonna put a ton of links below for you guys. I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully if you are reviewing CC or looking for, information about CC Foundations program, I hope that kind of helped. So good luck to you as you are choosing what's right for your family and as you're going into your next year of homeschool. And yeah, I post a fair amount of homeschool related videos on my channel. So, subscribe to see other CC related stuff. And that's it. Bye guys.